Perhaps I should have lowered the brightness. Yeah, this is cozier. Damn it. Hi friends and welcome back to my channel. A bit of a different setup and backdrop. I just thought it could be fun to play around with it a bit, film a bit differently, keep it spicy, keep it new and fresh. And I couldn't bother with setting up my camera. Today I thought that I would do a video that I kind of do once a year. And that's sharing all of the books that I am currently reading. We all know Goodreads. And we all know that little currently reading button on the book where you can click if you're currently reading a book. Just because the book is in that category does not mean that you are in fact currently reading that book. At least in my case. I wouldn't say I have a bad habit of starting book and not finishing them. I usually have every single intention of finishing a book if I start it. It's quite rare for me to DNF books. It's something I've started to do more in recent years. But it's still something I very rarely do. I think the main issue with these books are that I started to read them for various reading challenges, readathons, reading events. But then those events finished and I had not yet finished the book and I was starting another reading challenge, so I picked up another book. That's the main case with most of these, I would say. So some of these books have been on my currently reading for 3 years or so. If you've seen my other currently reading videos, you will recognize many of these, unfortunately. But I do promise that I have a couple of new additions as well. One of my goals for this year, it was the same last year, but hopefully I can achieve it this year, is to get my currently reading to less than 10 books. I believe at this exact moment I have 15 books on my currently reading. One is a book I'm actually currently reading. I promise I do read the books that I put on my currently reading. I have gathered all of the books here and we are going to talk through my pile of shame. Previously I have done this in like the order of the ones that have been on my TBR the longest, or books I have the most intention to complete as soon as possible and so on. I'm not gonna keep any order today. Feel free to comment which book you think I should actually focus on. Let's start with the book that I'm actually currently reading, and that is Lies We Sing to the Sea. A very shiny cover, but yeah, hopefully you can see it. I'm reading this now in May, hoping to finish it now in May. I'm on page 132, so I think I'm about like a fourth through it, 25-27%, something like that. I'm enjoying it. Next, we have City of Dusk by Tara Sim. I purchased this last year in, could it be August? Because I was doing my Participating in Everything challenge and I was supposed to join a book club where this was the pick for that book club. I've only read, I think, the first 1 or 2 chapters. I'm on chapter 2. I remember actually enjoying this and being intrigued by it, so I do want to pick it up again, but it is a chunker. It's a fantasy, something about realms. I don't know, it looks really cool. And it's slippery. I remember being intrigued. It's some type of high fantasy, I think. First in a sweeping epic fantasy trilogy set in a gorgeous world of dark magic, vengeful gods and rebellious chosen ones. I am excited to continue with this one actually. This is a good way to remind me to pick up these books again. Next up, another fairly recent addition to this list is Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. I genuinely attempted to join Catch Up Book Club and their First Law read-along hosted by Becca and the Books. This is the second book in the series. The read-along started this year. They are reading, I'm guessing, most of Joe Abercrombie's books, or at least the ones in this universe, so it's like 3 trilogies or something. It's a book every other month, so it's like a bi-monthly thing. You have 2 months to read each book. So I was supposed to finish this one in April and I didn't even really continue with it in May, so I am behind now. I still have this aspiration to catch up to the book club, but I don't think I'm gonna do it now in June, which means that I will be another book behind. I'm not sure how I'm gonna solve it. I did enjoy the first book, I gave it 4 stars, so I am intrigued to continue, but I do feel like this one is a bit slower actually. I'm struggling a bit with the series, but that is because it's a very character-driven series, which I typically like, but there's very little plot to this. Like nothing has happened and I've read 150 pages. It's a very different type of book. It's not your traditional type of adventure. So I have every ambition to catch up with the Catch Up Book Club. I'm not sure when that's gonna happen though. Let's keep on with the fantasy theme, because those seems to be the books that I struggle with. Next up we have The Ruin of Kings. I was supposed to read this 1.5 years ago. I think this perhaps might have been chosen in my TBR game. Another epic fantasy, don't quite remember what it's about or know. It's over 600 pages. And here I'm on page 100 quite exactly. It's a lovely flop to it. Oh my god, it's so smooth. I do want to continue with this. I've heard amazing things about the series overall. Once again, I started it for a readathon, didn't have time to finish it, and then the month ended and I started other reading stuff. This just got put aside, unfortunately. Why do I have so many fantasies here? Okay, while we're speaking of fantasies, Jade War. This one I'm actually quite ashamed that I still haven't finished. I read Jade City last January, loved it. Picked up Jade War and Jade Legacy right away. Started Jade War. Once again, I was trying to keep up with a read-along. I'm realizing that read-alongs perhaps aren't for me. Couldn't keep up with the read-along, didn't continue with the book. This one I'm 150 pages into. So like I do read quite a bit of the books I'm into, like 150 pages, 100, another 150. I'm so determined to finish this series. I know this is gonna break me. I love it, I want to continue with it, but it's just... So it's sometimes difficult to pick up books again when you have been away from them for a while, and I do not intend to reread the first few pages. I will remember things as I go. I don't typically struggle with that. I'm not that person that feel the need to recap something because it's been a while since I read it. Similar with series overall, like if it's been a couple of years since I read a series, and I'm continuing with that series, I don't care about rereading those first books in order to remember. I'm fine not doing that. Another book that I had every intention of reading now in May, but I'm gonna epically fail at, is The Wrath and the Dawn. I started this one for another round of Desertathon, which is a desert-themed readathon. I read, how far did I get in this one? 80 pages. Once again, not too bad. I just ran out of time during the week where I was supposed to read this. And now I put it last on my May TBR, which means I'm not gonna get to it. So I'm the one to blame here. I will get to it someday, I promise. I have 2 books right in front of me that have been quite long on my TBR. Hello, darkness, my old friend. War and Peace, Leo Tolstoy. I'm 78 pages into this one. That's not that bad if you ask me, considering it's 1300 pages. I bought this because I was supposed to read the longest book on my TBR, and I started reading it, then I didn't continue. But then I picked it up again and tried to read like 10 pages a day or something just to get through it. Still didn't keep up with that. I will read this at some point. I'm so determined. I don't believe I struggle with it from what I remember. I feel like the writing is actually quite accessible and I am interested in the story. It's just, this is quite intimidating. Overall, I would say I'm not a person that gets that intimidated by books. But even I can't deny that the size of this freaking book is insanely intimidating. And it's not really something that you can just bring with you on the bus. Or because the thing is though, one way I get through books other than reading them at home is on my commute. So when I go on the bus or on the subway or I go to my parents' place or wherever, I always make sure to bring a book. But this isn't really the type of book that you can easily bring with you. And I feel like that's the issue with many of these ones. Many of them are hardbacks and I don't typically bring hardbacks with me on the go. I bring paperbacks, or when I go traveling, I don't bring hardbacks, I bring paperbacks. This one is a book that's just gonna have to stay at home. I can't bring this anywhere. I'm gonna look insane. On the topic of hardbacks, Glory. This is also a fairly recent addition to the list. I picked it up to read it in May and I have started it now in May and I'm only like 22 pages in. So this one I'm actually doing quite poorly with. This is a library book, so I will need to return it at some point, unfortunately, because I do want to read it, but I do feel like it's a bit more difficult to get through. It's a satire, like a political satire, and it's not really something I can read before going to bed, because I feel like I need to focus my mind a bit more. But once again, it's a hardback, so it's not a book I've been bringing with me. I'm convinced that had I gotten this as a paperback from the library, I would have read it and been done with this, because I started this fairly early in May. But as I said, it's not a book I bring with me. I think solely because of that, I haven't finished it. You know what? I lowered the camera because I need to stretch my legs. Let's continue, because I'm still not done. Another hardback. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I bought this when it was first released, was super excited. Once again, intended to read it for a readathon. This was when I was just starting out with BookTube. So I wanted to read this for a readathon, started it, didn't finish it, never picked it up again. Partly because I was quite bored and disappointed in the story. I got like a third into it. I'm on page 164. But lately, very much because of the release of the trailer for this movie, I am intrigued to pick it back up and read it before I watch the movie. So I have every intention of finishing this one. I didn't care much at first. I started to think about unhauling it without finishing it. But since I've seen the Hunger Games Renaissance happening online and I've seen the trailer, I do still want to finish this one. Yes, so I'm up to date with the story, I guess. But I don't have any high expectations. I was quite bored with it. I don't remember much, but once again, I won't reread those first few pages. Please let me know, by the way, if you start reading a book that you have previously put aside, do you reread the pages that you've already read, or do you start from where you left? Because I'm a start from where I left off type of person, but I'm very curious to see how other people do. Do you actually reread it all? Do you actually do that? What if the start wasn't good? Do you still want to go through that? Next up, we have the Iliad. This is also a book I purchased really early on in my getting back into reading journey, mainly because I had seen this online and I was so, like, it's gorgeous. It's this beautiful leather-bound edition of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I had every intention of reading it. I think I randomized it twice or something throughout the year, and I'm on page 62. This one is actually 2 books in one, the Iliad and the Odyssey. I still have every intention of reading both, but I mean, once again, it's a book that I can't really bring with me on the go. First of all, because it's so gorgeous, it's also extremely heavy, so it's not something I'm gonna pack in my suitcase if I go traveling. I do want to read this, but it's a bit of a commitment, and the language is a bit tricky. It's like the original Greek story. It's an epic poem. It's 2 epic poems. It's a bit tricky to read. 2 books I'm actually hoping to read now in June and finish in June. First we have The Book Thief, which is good, because this is not even my book. I've had it for closer to 2 years, I think now, maybe 3. It's my friend's book. I borrowed it. I read 100 pages. I was reading it for a readathon once again, and I never completed it, and she should really get this book back. I do believe that we have both moved since she borrowed me this book. The next one I will attempt and do my best with finishing is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. Once again, very early on in my booktube journey is when I got this and started to read it, or even before, honestly. And I think it's a great book. It's just, once again, it's so dense, and then I started to get more into fiction, so I put this aside and I picked it back up. This one I actually do have the intention of restarting though, because I remember there being so many, I guess, smart things, or many things that I appreciated and felt like I learned. So I would love to annotate that, actually. This was randomly chosen for me in my latest TBR video, and my ambition is to finish this now in June, so fingers crossed. Next book is Box by Läckberg and Fexeus. This is a Swedish book written by 2 Swedish authors. I started this one for a readathon. I think the prompt was to read something with a red cover, so this was perfect. I remember being surprised that I actually enjoyed it, and I'm 50 pages into it. I put this aside because I ran out of time once again, but I do want to continue with it. I don't really regret buying it. Perhaps I regret buying it as a hardback once again. I do think I would have read this earlier if I had it as a paperback. So perhaps this is a lesson to myself to not unnecessarily purchase hardbacks. Final book on this list is none other than Priory of the Orange Tree. I'm almost 50 pages into this one, actually. I started reading this in November, I think. I personally arranged like a buddy read for this. I think we were like 3 or 4 people in a group chat on Twitter, and we were all gonna read this for the last 2 months of the year. I did quite good in November, didn't pick it up in December, but I'm almost like halfway, I think 44% or something. I did enjoy it, I am into it, but it is a slower type of read. It's not something that's gonna grab you and be addictive. Once again, the month ended and I started to read other things for other reading challenges. Final book that I don't own physically. I started to read it on my e-reader, and that is It Happened Last Summer by Tessa Bailey. I'm not quite certain why I haven't continued with it. See, I think it's because I wasn't that into it. I believe I'm 10% into it, and it's not the most impressive start. The characters aren't really that likable, which is sort of the point. I think the main character is supposed to become a likable character, but she's not at the start. So I kind of wasn't just into it, I think. I do have every intention of finishing it at some point. I just don't know when. I'm not gonna prioritize it. The hype for that book has sort of passed as well, and that's the bad thing with this. Like, so many of these books I started to read because of a hype or because of a read-along or something. But when that hype or read-along or whatever passes, it can be tricky to get into things again. So those are the 15 books that are on my currently reading. If I were to say how many I can complete in a nearby future, we have The Book Thief, Sapiens, Lies We Sing to the Sea, and also I think this one actually, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because I want to finish it before the movie, and I'm also gonna throw in Jade War. Lately I've been having this itch to continue with the series, but I've just struggled to squeeze this into my TBRs. But one day I will. As long as I don't keep adding books to this category, this pile of shame, I think maybe I can achieve my goal this year of getting the number to a single digit. Please let me know what book you think I should prioritize on this list. Also let me know if you perhaps want me to do a trying to finish my current reads type of vlog for a week sometime in the summer maybe. Feel free to share any thoughts about these books and how I should approach the reading of these books, I guess. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please take care and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!
You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes after or what came before.
These books are housekeeping so many of my bookmarks. Like this one has this beautiful one that my grandma made me. It's really pretty. This one has my new moon bookmark. I want it back. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Another one that my grandma made me. Jade War. This one. My friend drew it for me and I laminated it. This one. Another one of my friends made me. It's a Winnie the Pooh one. And it's so cute. I want my bookmarks back. Another one my grandma did. And a fourth one that my grandma did. The main motivation for me to finish these books are to get my bookmarks back.